started out making $0, and then after 2 months it was making $50. By a couple months in, it was making $200, $300. The wheels start turning a bit, and you're like, well, if we can, maybe double every couple of months, maybe in a year or two, this could be something good.
Tom, what's good, my boy?
Hey, not much, Ben. How you doing?
I am good. I'm good. So I already gave you a massive intro before we got into this. So everybody who's at this point now, they know everything you've done. So I want to start instead with where you were before you got to all those things, because I think most people that watch shows like this, they keep seeing people at the end, and there's no relation to how they got there. So I want you to take me back to as far back as you'll take me, Tom, to little Tom, and then how you got towards building all these things online.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. Like, people kind of see the end product a lot of people produce, and I was no different, right? Like, I remember being in high school and early college and basically seeing people post online like income reports from their websites, from their YouTube channels, people running online businesses, and kind of thinking like, hey, how do these people have successful online businesses? How have they kind of quit the 9 to 5 job route? How have they built their own business that gives them, financial freedom, time, like freedom over their time? And that kind of got the wheels turning. That I would say, and then reading different books like Pat Flynn's The 4 Hour Work Week, like things like that, kind of got like young Tom's wheels turning.
Okay. Do you remember the first few people that you saw talking about this online?
First few, so there was Pat Flynn. Aside from that, there were a ton of different bloggers at the time writing income reports. Okay. So they were publishing like, here's how much I make every single month from my website. A lot of them were food bloggers, but there were people in all kinds of niches just talking about digital publishing and the income they were making. And it sounded surreal. Like they were making full-time incomes just off of a website.
But when you read them, and this is actually really, really important for anybody who's just starting out, when you read them, did you think that it was possible, or did you think they were full of shit?
That's a good question. Honestly, it was like a 50-50 because and I'm sure you see this too with all kinds of different side hustles and different niches and things, but a lot of people will say they're making something, but they don't post screenshots or proof or anything like that. So it was the same with blogging. Like a lot of income reports of people saying I have a 6-figure blog, and most of them didn't post screenshots. So it felt kind of fishy, but I was still curious. I thought it might be real.
Okay, well, that's awesome. So that's also that is, I think, the perfect answer. Like if you take anything from this episode, it's that you should approach opportunities like that. So like with optimism, like it could be possible, but skepticism in terms of I'm going to look into this. Because most people that don't ever achieve anything, it's because they're holistically negative. Like they're only negative. When I go through, I read these comments, sometimes because we've already been there, we're on the other side. And almost too optimistic sometimes now because I've seen that it is possible. So when I go through and I read comments, I so often see people just like straight negative all the time. And I'm like, hey, well, if you train yourself to only see reasons why something can't work, that's going to happen. So I love that you were kind of like 50-50. That's how everyone should handle it. So after you figure out, you're trying to dig into this, what are the first few steps in terms of figuring it out for yourself?
Well, in terms of figuring it out for myself, I mean, I can take you back to one of the first side hustles
please.
I started, if you'd like. So,
please.
And this is a perfect example of like, you read something online, it looks maybe too good to be true, but it's interesting, so you try it out. So one of the main side hustles I started was phone farming. And so this was early into college, and I basically stumbled across a Reddit thread where people had like all of these burner phones, and they were running video reward apps, which essentially, just gave you small amounts of free money every day for like watching ads and these video reward apps. I think it was a bunch of advertisement fraud. I don't really know why the apps existed, but people were saying on Reddit, I make like $500 a month from my phone farm, which, we were in school at the time. And
that was big money, man.
That's big money. Yeah. So I bought, I think it was 2 phones off of Amazon to start. And I installed these apps and I just let them run in like on top of my desk. And they were making like, a couple bucks here or there. So I bought more phones. I got some used phones from some friends. And eventually I had 9 burner phones running these video reward apps in my house or college house. And sure enough, it did make money. I was getting free gift cards, but it was like 30 something bucks a month, 40 something bucks a month on a good month. So it was not the $500 a month that was advertised on Reddit.
But you did have the balls to try, which I think is the biggest thing here, is just to try and see, because you quickly learned with a bit of effort, you figured out, okay, it does make money, but they're embellishing how much it makes. And I want to know, more importantly, how did people respond to walking in and seeing these phones just sitting there watching ads?
Yeah, that was a funny one. I remember like we had a house tour where, like landlords get rid of tenants and new tenants come in. And so people were weirded out. Like they saw these phones just kind of spinning, like ads just spinning on these phones on my desk. I know my girlfriend at the time, she liked it. She thought it was funny, but also didn't really like, like tinkering with, well, eventually we moved in together. And at the time, one of our spare room had like all these phones in it, which was a bit weird. And there's like people were like, oh, will they catch fire? Will they explode? Like they're running all the time. Like it was a bit of a silly side hustle. But it was fun. It was very fun.
Dude, that's so awesome. I can just picture people walking in thinking you're running some sort of hacking operation or something like that.
Yeah, someone thought it was something fishy going on when they were touring the house.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. So then how do you go from phone farming and having this phone farm? It's almost hard for me to say. It's so funny. I love that you did that. And then where does it start to become real? Because you've achieved a lot of real things. So what was the next phase in your exploration of online business?
Well, this is kind of the funny thing about the story, I think. So I tested out phone farming and I realized this isn't true what they're saying on Reddit. So I started a website called This Online World in January 2018, and my first posts were mostly about phone farming. They were about
No way.
yeah, they were about the apps I was using, my income reports, and kind of just providing like some honest content about the space. And there were influencers in the space at the time. Funnily, like it's a funny niche, but there were people covering
There were
these sort of
influencers for phone farming?
yeah, for like
That's
it's
so
like the
awesome.
like the beer money space, and it's actually big on Reddit to this day. It's still quite big. So I started covering these beer money applications, and I think that's one funny thing about side hustles that I'm sure you've seen too, where it's like you try something and it fails, but then it just feeds into the next thing. So yeah, I basically started writing about beer money and side hustles.
Dude, that's so awesome. It's literally just trying something, and then if failing is almost impossible once you're constantly doing shit, because you stumble across opportunities. Like a business that I just launched literally this week happened so by accident. Like we posted a random video and then people were demanding for a tool to be built for this, and we're like, okay. And then we built it, right? And that only happens from trying things. So that's so awesome that you did it. And then I love that you made your trying of these things into its own thing, right? So like you documented it at the same time as you were doing it. So you did that through the blog, which eventually became the main thing for a while. Like, so then how does it start making more money as you're talking about like very small things? How do you scale that up?
Yeah, that's another good question. That's something that it took me a long time to learn with blogging, and I think it's probably similar on YouTube because I mean, there's kind of two routes. Like a lot of people will stick super niche, and maybe they'll dominate that niche, but it's so small, it could be difficult to build enough audience and really build a real business.
Mm-hmm.
And on the flip side, some people might start gunning for the top topics in a niche and they'll never be found because it's so competitive. Um, with this online world, it was kind of trial and error. Like I started publishing more regularly, and it really just became a case of doing more of what worked.
Okay.
Like the phone farm stuff was working, so I pivoted a bit more into like other beer money topics, like surveys, gaming apps, things like that. I also tried writing about like digital marketing, online businesses, SEO for a while. I was writing about a few more topics, but those didn't catch. And so, it was that balancing act. It took a couple of years to learn, but kind of which lanes to focus in and like which lanes were driving the most traffic and revenue. And I just started focusing on those.
Okay. So then as you're figuring out and you're trying all these different side hustles, I assume that as you're writing the blog articles, you're also like learning more about each of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like testing survey sites, game apps. We would, got to the point of interviewing people who would, deliver for Uber Eats or DoorDash.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. And like you'd see an app, like you'd see an ad for an app, and you download it, test it out, you get to write about it the next day. It was a lot of fun. And a lot of people in the space weren't kind of doing the groundwork at the time. Like
Yes.
they were like pretending they've, cashed out with a survey site, but they had never signed up. There's no proof.
Yeah, and one thing I respect so much about you is that you've done it brick by brick, and I've seen you do it every single time. And so I think one of the biggest takeaways from Tom's story, and we're going to get into further how impressive it is. Like, Tom's one of the most humble people I know, so I'm going to have to make him brag. But like, seeing you do it, when you do it like that, you literally can't lose, right? Because you think it's so much more competitive than it is, but most of the people you're competing against that are there right now, they're not doing the shit that Tom's talking about, right? Like, they're cutting corners left, right, and center. And so if you're just willing to do the extra work, you will get the reward. But it's like, how long can you do the work without seeing the money, right? Because most people, when they're like you and they start something like this, and their girlfriend's like, oh, it's weird that you have these phones, they just stop, put it away, and never touch it again. So
Yeah.
like, what was it in you that made you say, whatever, I don't care, girlfriend, that you hate this or whatever? Like, how did you not care?
Yeah, it was tough at this, for the first while because especially with school and having a job, right? Like you want to work on something that's fulfilling and fun, which thankfully it really was. So that kept me going for a while. But, after 6 months, a year, like you really want to start seeing some more results for what you're doing. But the results were incremental. I mean, the blog started out making $0, and then after 2 months, it was making $50. And then,
That's pretty amazing, dude.
well, and then by a couple months in, it was making $200, $300 off of AdSense revenue. So you the wheels start turning a bit. And you're like, well, if we can, maybe double every couple of months, maybe in a year or two, this could be something good. So,
Dude,
it's brick by brick, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. That's like one of the first things I think of when I think of Tom. Is just like you're constantly stacking, and that's why you've won so much. Is because you put one foot in front of the other because you know you're going in the right direction. You don't care if there's a bit of a veer in the road. You just keep moving forward and you get there, which is so awesome. And I remember that feeling when my YouTube channel started making money online, or my affiliate making money from my YouTube channel. Like it's a difficult feeling to describe for anyone who's not made their own dollars out of nothing, which really, like blog content or a YouTube video, you're making money from air, right? And so when you actually see that happen, your life changes, and you almost need, because it doesn't seem like it should be possible. And I remember when I was grunting this out, you probably have a similar experience where my dad would watch me work all the time, and he's like, how much money have you made? And I'm like, $0. And he'd be like, then why do you keep doing this every single night? And I'd say, because I'm going to do this until the point where I don't ever have to do anything if I don't want to.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's all there if you're willing to continue to look silly long enough until everyone looks at you like a genius.
Yeah. I mean, there's like the Mr. Beast story, right? In a way, it's, I forget how many years he spent, but, he has videos like he counts to 100,000 or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's
Like,
crazy.
It's an insane thing to do, but it's like he just kept making better videos. And then over time, he's.
You stumble into it.
Yeah, it took off like crazy, which is such a cool story. And this is just a fraction of anything of that level, but it's the same kind of idea. Just stack wins over time.
100%. But it's also allowed you to build your dream life that you had for yourself in terms of traveling the world and all this stuff. But I think that's the biggest thing, man, is just if you keep doing things, you stumble into the wins, right? Like they never seem obvious until you look back and you find them. But a lot of people aren't doing enough stuff to stumble into shit, right? Like you so often, whenever you hear advice videos like this, and that's why I started this podcast, because so much stuff, they give such surface level shit because they know they have to keep people around. And I'm not going to do that. So if you guys don't listen to all of this, that's totally fine, because I'm going to go more in depth because it's what I wanted. And so I'm going to try to make the show that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And so like the biggest thing with that is that when you're looking for what works, you need to try so many things to even determine, like, is there any validity to this whatsoever? But so many people, when they fail one thing, they assume that everything is wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and you oftentimes hear like, oh, you need a unique advantage for it to work. The only way you get a unique advantage is if you do so much shit that no one else could have had that exact path.
Yeah, more or less.
Right? Because like you now have this crazy advantage for the niche that you're writing in because you actually went and started phoning farms. Like if you think about farming phones, if you think about how few people would actually get to doing that, it's insane. Because how many people read our blogs or read your blogs or watch my videos, and how many of them actually take action? If you had to put a percentage number to that, what would you say it is?
I mean, for some of the beer money stuff, maybe a couple of, it could be a high percentage, but I think for some of the more in-depth stuff that would take a few years, I think it's a smaller percentage. I think people are afraid of sometimes the delayed gratification of it all.
That's where all of the success is, because you look at it and you think, you see a video with 1 million views and you think that, okay, there's probably 100,000 people who followed through with this. It's probably like a few hundred. genuinely, that actually got to all the way there, because there's so many levels of resistance
Yeah.
that if you don't push through that, then it's just over. And then the problem with that is that everybody who falls off along the way, they now see it as a scam. Right. So they're like, oh, this way of making money online doesn't work because it didn't work for me. And so now there's more people that have failed, not because it didn't work, but because they're lazy. And so now there's all these people that are 99% saying it doesn't work. And then the one guy over here is who actually did it. These people are all like, he's full of shit. He's lying. But
Yeah.
it's like, that's why I want to have this show to show people. It's like, yo, you literally did this. So after you're becoming the side hustle guy, right? And you're trying out all these different side hustles. You're interviewing people that are also doing side hustles. How do you eventually turn that into, like, this online world into a business that you have run and sold? Like, how does that mature into what it is now?
Yeah, that was an interesting time. So for the first couple of years running this online world, I still had a day job, and then when I quit the day job, I got into freelance writing and started traveling. So it still wasn't blogging full time necessarily. It was, a lot of freelance clients and then blogging. Um, what kind of ended up happening was the blog just slowly got better and better. So it got, more premium advertisements on it from a network called Mediavine. So
Okay.
basically, instead of running Google AdSense, it had some higher paying ads on it. I started getting better affiliate partners and kind of expanding the network of companies I was working with. And it just slowly snowballed. So traffic was growing, income was growing. And I think it was in 2021 or 2022, it kind of clicked like this formula is working. I just need to do more of it. And
Okay.
so that's when I really started ramping up the publishing schedule, because I was publishing maybe once a week, twice a week for the first 3 years, more or less, with this online world. But it was working. And so I eventually realized, okay, I got to hire some freelance writers. I need to ramp up production here. And so I just started pushing a lot more. And it was working. The thing kind of took off. It benefited from some Google updates, which was pretty huge. So it kind of rode this like organic traffic wave into 2023, all the way from 2021.
So that hits me with two questions. The first one's more of a technical one. So you said you got into a better ad network, because everyone can get into Google AdSense. So then how did you get your website into the more premium ad network?
Yeah, so there's several ad networks out there. There's like Mediavine, there's Raptive, there's quite a few. A lot of them have traffic requirements, and so
Mm,
that was another thing that was daunting when I started blogging. Like at the time, Mediavine, I think it was 50,000 monthly readers was what you needed to apply. It was something like that.
okay.
And all of the income reports I was reading, they were from Mediavine bloggers,
Mm.
and so it was like the North Star. Like, okay, you need to get to 50,000 monthly viewers no matter what, and then apply to Mediavine. And so I remember it was October of, I don't know, 2020, I think, and I was close. I was at like, I was at like 30 something thousand sessions per month. I was averaging, or 40 something thousand. And I just went crazy for the next month or two, like posting on Reddit, posting all over social media, like brute forcing the
Your way
extra
there.
sessions, yeah, just to get the threshold, and thankfully got in. And then, the next couple of days, once I got the ads on the site, like, you know, making way more money all of a sudden.
So I want to talk a lot more about side hustles, because you're kind of the guy who knows so much about them. But you turned your side hustle into a main thing, like a full on business. So when you're looking at a side hustle that you're doing, and you saw an opportunity to turn this into something bigger, like what were the signs that said I should do this? Because most people, that's like really risky what you did in terms of investing into something that's making a bit of money because you believe it can make more. So the two questions I would have off of that, because so many people get stuck there, is like, what was it that told you this is worth it? And then how do you actually take the leap?
Yeah, that is a tricky one, because my first instinct, and this was for years with running the blog, was like pinch every penny and keep it all,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said, this is
We
like
were
thin air.
poor. Yeah.
Yeah, it's thin air. It's not real. It could go up in smoke. And I do think there's merit in that. And so even when I started reinvesting into the site, I still kept a pretty high margin. Like it was still over 70%. I basically found freelancers who wrote at a decent rate, and even just going from one post per week up to like 4 or 5 posts per week, it wasn't that expensive for me to do. But you're 5xing the output that you were doing. So it still had a healthy margin. I didn't go crazy. I know a lot of people in blogging went all in and started like 10 blogs. And that was a different business model, a different strategy. But at the time I was thinking, I still want to pocket some money, take it off the table, because I don't know if this thing will last forever, but I did want to reinvest something. So I kind of, I guess, kept it a bit conservative.
Okay. And how'd you teach yourself how to write to rank, like for SEO? Like, where'd you acquire this skill?
That's another good question because that's one of the beauties of side hustling, I think, is you just learn so much by doing. And so, for one, with the freelance writing clients I had, I was almost getting paid to learn. Like
Mm,
a lot of the clients I had at the beginning were paying like, I think my first one was 5 cents per word, which it actually worked out to a decent hourly rate, but it wasn't anything crazy, like, 50 bucks an article, 60 bucks an article. But they were teaching their writers how to write for SEO, how to properly compete on Google. I was learning the same things from trying to grow this online world. And just by Googling and YouTubing things, like no courses needed, no expensive mentor or anything like that. Just, Google it, figure it out, test it out.
I think freelancing or starting your own agency, however you want to label it, can be one of the biggest hacks to acquire attention or skills
Yeah.
and learn like everything you need and get paid for it. Like that's genuinely the most slept on thing. But most people are like, hey, how do I get clients? So how
Yeah.
did you get clients?
That's another funny thing about side hustling. Most of my clients, I used this online world as a portfolio piece. So
Mm,
it was actually funny because there were much bigger finance sites out there that didn't just cover beer money and things like that, but they sometimes dabbled in beer money. And so they would actually see my site in organic rankings. And so I approached a few of them. I said, I can write for you as well. And I just used my site as a portfolio. So on the one hand, it was like, working with the enemy in a way, which was kind of funny. But again,
it
you learn a
benefited
lot
you.
from, yeah, you learn a lot from them. You have good connections. They open the doors for other freelance writing clients. And yeah, freelance writing was something I loved doing for years. I, still do it occasionally. I ended up doing it for Forbes and some other sites out there for a while, which was pretty fun. And it teaches you a lot, even though
100%.
it eventually was a bit of a distraction from the business. But
Eventually. Yeah. But
yeah,
for starting off, I think that's so important. And also, my story was pretty similar with my YouTube agency was the fact that I had my own YouTube channel with like X amount of subscribers and they could see my videos. That changes the game. Most people that are saying, "Oh, I can't get clients," or "It's so hard to get clients," it's because they're not actually showing that they know what they're doing. Right? So many people, there are so many theory-driven people on the sidelines that are in the comment sections of things
yeah.
saying like, "This doesn't work," or "This is like this." It's like, okay, you might be absolutely right, but until you apply it, no one knows if you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's very true. And like what I like about that strategy of actually like building some kind of portfolio is you can do it for free. Like you could start a YouTube channel for free. You could write articles on something like medium.com or your own blog for basically free.
Mm,
If you're a graphic designer, you can just design things for fun and build a portfolio. Like you actually don't need clients to get a portfolio. You just have to, do the work, build a portfolio, and then you'll have, the ability to pitch clients a lot better.
So if you were starting today and you hadn't done anything yet, really, what would your thing be that you'd start from scratch? If you're like, if you could go, like, if you're 18 today, what is Tom now saying to that 18-year-old for where to start?
I mean, I love content creation. I think in this day and age, it would be, hey, start a YouTube channel
Okay.
talking about something you love, something you're really passionate about, which is again super similar to what I did in 2018. Start a blog
Yeah.
about something you're passionate about, something you love. I just think in 2025 and moving forwards, I think video is a little bit more compelling than a blog. No one really reads blogs anymore,
Mm.
and the landscape's changed a lot.
So,
Um,
so do you think blogging's dead then?
yeah, people ask that every year, and I was always up until recently, I was always like, blogs are never going to die. I love blogs. Um, blogging's not dead because I think at the end of the day, like building web pages that have valuable content and affiliate links on them or display ads and things that are monetized, you can drive traffic to them in all sorts of ways, right? Like from YouTube, an email list, Pinterest marketing, TikTok, all kinds of things. I think the style of blogging where you write valuable content and cross your fingers and hope Google likes you, I think that's gone. The landscape's changed so much. The updates are tough. They're lately really penalizing niche bloggers and favoring Reddit and big media
Yes.
companies, which I'm sure you've seen even in the search results, right? Like it's all big sites and YouTube and Reddit. So I think it's changed. I don't think it's dead, but I think it's very different.
Okay, that's really good to know. And so then if someone is trying to get into that world, what are the best resources you recommend for learning current day SEO strategies for Google? Is there any creators that talk about it?
There's a lot on YouTube.
Okay.
There are quite a few on YouTube. Matt Diggity's one. I'm pretty sure his name is. He has some good content. The tricky part with SEO is a lot of these guys now are selling courses, and it's difficult to sell a course saying you should not start a blog because it's a bad business model. Stay away from SEO. Stay away from
True.
blogging.
So they need to say it's really great.
Typically, and some of them do. Some of them haven't really changed their tune in the last few years, which is surprising. But there are some people who are saying kind of what I'm saying now, like, the days of you starting a niche blog where you talk about the brownies you're baking, that's going to be tough on Google. But it doesn't mean it's dead, right? You have to learn some SEO, you have to learn some social media marketing, and find creative ways to get people to see your stuff.
For sure. And so anything that you have that's traffic driven, whether it be Instagram, YouTube, whatever, it's just an asset. But the traffic is the beginning, not the end. And that's the mistake that I think most people make, is that they think traffic will solve all of their problems. If that were true, there'd be no broke creators and my show wouldn't exist. Like the Anti-Broke Creator Club would not need to exist. But most people out there have so much traffic and no money from it because so many people are teaching the view part and not the view to the money part, right? And so that's like really the thesis of this entire show. So if you had young person in front of you and they said, what should I do? And then you said YouTube channel. What are the steps from turning that into a little passion project into a business? Because there's so many different steps that go into that. So if could you sit down and explain that to me, how you would do that?
Oh, I'm explaining YouTube to the YouTube guru. That's a tough
No,
one.
please.
Well, I think you nailed it, because a lot of people, I think, especially with platforms like TikTok and other things, they get excited by the view count. Like it explodes, they get a viral reel, things are looking like they're skyrocketing, but yeah, there's no plan to basically capture the audience and then monetize the audience in any kind of way. So I do think with a YouTube channel, people do have to kind of go through the lessons the hard way. I think they have to film a bunch of videos, learn how to edit them themselves, post a video, see it get 5 views, then think about what went wrong and kind of go through that process. I don't think there's a real way to kind of skip that step. So I think like learning the skills, building the traffic base, and kind of becoming better bit by bit is how you get started, and kind of get your first videos off of the ground, get the channel running. In terms of monetizing it, I guess you have all kinds of options. I'd be curious what you think for new creators, what the best way is to monetize a new channel. I think the YouTube partner program is great just as a starting goal for anyone.
Fantastic starting point. Yeah, and I think that if you're brand new to this and you're taking Tom's advice of starting a channel, there's 2 approaches that I always give. One's either the shotgun or the sniper approach, the ones that I explain. For if you are young and you don't have a lot of world experience, you're not an expert in anything, I recommend taking the shotgun approach. That's what I took on YouTube. That's what Tom took with blogging. It's you try everything that you're remotely interested in, and when something sticks because you were interested in it, you're okay with that, right? Or if you're an expert, like if you're older, you're a little farther in life and you're genuinely an expert in something, then you can just start with more of a narrow focus because you genuinely know enough about something to talk about it at length, right? I think a lot of young kids, the mistake they make is that they come to a space because they think there's a lot of traffic in there. They're not actually an expert, and they're basically saying the same thing over and over again, getting views, but they can't turn it into a business. Right. And so, so I think that's the thing I would say is that if you're listening to this, and you should listen to Tom, and you want to start a YouTube channel, take that approach. And I love the fact that you said just the AdSense program. I think that's why I was really attracted to YouTube from the beginning, because I was like, I can put something up and it makes money for me passively every single day. They're like little salespeople. You know what I mean? Every video that you put up, it's like a commission only sales rep that pays you to work for you, which is absolutely insane. So I think absolutely start there. But I think the awesome thing that we need to talk about here is the fact that you can start making money before you get in there. Because like a lot of people, they look at that. They look at, I need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And those aren't small numbers, man. Like, especially if you're in a concentrated niche, those are very high numbers. And so if you have something to sell, I'd say sell it from day one. Or what you can also do is have something that's not even made yet, but a concept, and experiment with different concepts, put them up there for pre-sale. And if someone buys it, then go make it. Like I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, what they do, and we've been guilty of this too, is we've not made products because we're like, oh, we always come up with 101 excuses. But sometimes people really want what you have to offer. They just don't know that it's available, right? And so I think
Yep.
testing different offers from the beginning, or as soon as you have a bit of skill, is a really good idea. And there's examples of this all over YouTube. Like Jake Tran, I'm sure you've heard of his stuff, right?
Yep.
He was a YouTuber who he used to be like a high commission sales guy. He used to make videos about that. And then he had one video blow up that was kind of in his current style. And in his bio, he had how to make the best resume course. And it wasn't even related to the thing that he was doing, but he made thousands of dollars because one video hit. So if you don't
Wow.
have something to sell, your wins that you eventually stumble upon can't be as big.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, like you said, like we've been guilty of that, of not launching products or info products or things like that. But yeah, with the new channel, that is true. Like I've seen people do that with fitness courses. I've seen them do it with cookbooks. I've seen small channels do it with all kinds of products that they make. And again, with any of this, whether it's AdSense or your first product or something on YouTube, I think once someone gets their first dollar online, I
Changes.
think most people are hooked.
100%. Yeah. And you can also do affiliates. Like there's so many existing businesses that, and Tom and I are huge on this, where we go associate with an established product and you just bring them traffic and that's the end of your job. And some of these can be ongoing commissions too. So when I explain affiliate marketing to people, like sometimes it blows their mind that it's even a concept that exists. You know what I mean? And then, because we grew up in that where that was such a major talking point, where it's far less so now. So I think that's another really good one. But don't be afraid to make your own product, man, or at least say you have your own product, put up the landing page for it. And then if people buy it, then go make it, right? So I would say validate the idea before you put the time into making something, because you don't want to spend a ton of time making something that no one wants. Mm-hmm. So I think being honest about the fact that it's being built and offer a discount for the early people. If you sell like 5 or 6 courses on something and you don't have a lot of traffic, that's a good indication of interest. And if you want a way to sell something that's been done 101 times, I'm seeing this be so successful for people. It's just modernizing a concept. And sometimes it's like bringing two worlds together. Like the one example that comes to mind is this guy, his name's something, Mr. Belmar is his name, and he's blown up this school community. It's all based on fitness and nutrition, but he blew it up by taking a unique marketing angle of making it fitness and nutrition and blending it with anime.
Oh, that's interesting.
So like he's not, and I bought it for research purposes. I went in and bought his school and I was going through the content and I'm like, this is stuff that is everywhere in every freaking course about online fitness. It's literally
Right.
the same shit. But he marketed it in a way where it aligns with other people's really deep interest that they're so passionate in. So where can you find those intersections of something that's been beaten to a pulp, right? Like fitness, like everyone and their mom knows like 400 fitness creators.
Yeah.
And then how do you just take a slightly different twist by associating with a smaller potential audience size, but one that's way more loyal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen that be super successful. And if you start paying attention, you're going to see more and more people are doing that. So I think that's one good way, but you only figure out what that could be for you from making content.
Exactly.
So I think the biggest thing is just to fail a bunch of times, make a bunch of really shitty videos. Cause I know so many video experts that have never posted a video before.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, there's a lot of theory and a lot of people who jump right to selling courses or jump right to trying to be the niche expert without having spent time in the niche, which I think people can tell. I think as more content's produced, especially more AI content
Yes.
and more like mass produced content, I think that's a strategy that can work. But I do think if someone goes in trying to be a niche expert, but they don't actually know what they're talking about, I think people can detect it. I don't think it works.
Yeah, more and more each day. So I think just putting in the time, trying a bunch of shit's going to help you out a ton. And then definitely sell before you think you're ready, because if you wait till you think you're ready, you will never be ready. Because especially the more you, what's that? Is it what's that learning curve that we learned about in school, where it's like the people who know the least think they know the most, and the more that you learn, the less that you actually know, because you realize how much there is to know.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's very true. So that's also a problem of why I say sell before you think you're ready, because the issue is the more that you start to learn, the more you realize there's so much to learn. So I think monetizing as early as possible is a very good idea, and YouTube's one of my favorite ways to do that. But those are some of the more niche things that I like. You run your blog and you talk a lot about side hustles, or you have for the past little bit, and your YouTube channel. So not to mention, Tom has a YouTube channel with over 100,000 subscribers. So he's got one of these guys too, right here. I'm pointing at my my plaque. He's got one of them. So you're constantly trying different apps and different ways to make money online. What are your favorite current methods that are working for easy side hustles?
Easy side hustles. Yeah, I mean, I still cover the beer money space to this day, right? And people often hate on it because they're not making thousands of dollars a month from any of these kinds of websites or apps or hustles out there, but they work, they're effective. People answer surveys in their spare time, they make a couple bucks an hour. Maybe they get into things like microtask websites, Amazon MTurk, Appin, Clickworker, sites like that, where again the pay's not great, but it's a couple dollars an hour kind of thing. And yeah, I've been making content about these kind of sites for years, and a lot of people outside of North America and Europe really like these sites because the hourly pay is quite decent for where they're living. And even people in North America can still use them too and make a little bit of side money. I think there are easy online side hustles. It's just people have to have realistic expectations, right? Because I see it in YouTube comments all the time, or I get emails even from people saying, this survey site is terrible. It sucks. I hate it. It doesn't pay me anything or pays me like a couple bucks an hour. It's like, that's
what you said.
That's the world of survey sites. That's how they work. Yeah. I mean, that was the case with phone farming. That was the case with a lot of these kinds of easy online hustles I cover. They're not going to make you a millionaire, but they do work.
See, that's the difference between what Tom and I are talking about versus what most gurus will talk about, because the approach that we're saying, literally anybody can do. Like, most people won't, but anybody could, right? Whereas the other stuff where it's like get rich quick or this niche business model, that's like the 1 in a million thing, because there's so many things that have to go your way. And so the problem is that ruins this opportunity for all the people that will just do the work, man. Like, if you just show up and create shit and keep doing that, eventually you're going to stumble into money. It just happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, that it's frustrating with, in particular, it's frustrating with this online income niche because you do see a lot of people promising fast overnight riches from like drop shipping in particular,
yes,
or Amazon FBA. And like these are business models where you can actually lose money. It's not
Yeah.
It's not even like you spend 6 months of your time and you make no money, you walk away, you learn some lessons. Like, you can actually lose a lot of money on Facebook ads or inventory. And I think that's still a valuable lesson in like learning how to build an online business, but they are promoted oftentimes as, yeah, you'll become a millionaire, you'll become a drop shipping success. And like, it's often more complicated than it seems when, with any of these online businesses.
100%. And with I want to talk a little bit more about your YouTube channel. So we had this like argument back and forth, you and I, or not like a power struggle over the packaging of your videos, because we'd always talk about it. And you were actually giving genuine, solid information all the time. And I could see your competitors, and they were giving out trash, but they were really selling up the concept of the video with like an intriguing title and thumbnail. And so then they'd get views. And so then people associate, oh, this got a lot of views, this must be good information, right? Which is, I think, one of the biggest problems in online education, period, right? Is that the people's bias of, what's the word, where social proof, like the social proof bias is dictating how people interpret content. So 2 things off of this. The first question that I'll get you to answer is, why did you struggle with that so much? Because you knew you could have turned on the juice and got way more views, but you still wouldn't do that. What was that?
Yeah, and this is something I still think about because, and I've noticed it as the channel's grown. When I first started posting videos on YouTube, and replying to every comment, and like it felt like a really tight knit community, and it was growing super slowly. And like you were saying, like the competitors were way above me, getting way more views. It was really hard to grow. At some point in time, I did start playing the game a little bit more with the packaging, how it's represented, and it is frankly more clickbait than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I still try to reply to all the comments I can, but some slip through the cracks. But it does have a vibe of being a bit less of a tight knit community and more of just a slightly bigger YouTube channel, which I think is kind of just par for the course. But at some point in time, you do have to play a bit of the YouTube game, I think. But I don't think it has to dilute your content. I mean, you got to clickbait a little bit. You got to make the thumbnails catchy. But if the information you're packaging in there is still valuable and honest information, I think you're better off reaching more people with that positive message than never doing any clickbait, never doing any optimized thumbnails, and like having this moral high ground where you're like, no one sees my videos, but I didn't clickbait. Like,
That's the struggle you and I had all the time, where I was like, you have genuinely good information to provide, which is really rare. Most of this stuff is garbage, and your stuff's actually well researched, honest, and to the point. But unfortunately, where the platform is as YouTube, I love YouTube so much, but it's really a gatekept platform, because unless you're like me or know someone like me who's had years of experience in understanding what gets people to click, it is so hard to structure a video in the way that entices the target audience. That's an incredibly difficult skill. Like, I would say content packaging is probably the most difficult thing in the world. But if you're someone like Tom, who genuinely has good information, you have to do that for people to even get through to find it. So if you're a creator, I think realize how important the packaging game really is. And if you don't get it, then work with someone who does, because that's the biggest needle mover. It's why it's our primary offer within my YouTube agency, bunnymedia.co. And that's why we focus on it so much, because it's the highest leverage act that doesn't take as much work. Like, you're already sitting down, you're making these videos, you're going really in depth. But if you don't structure it in a way that makes sense for who you're trying to target, no one sees it. And at that point, what is the point, right? But one other thing for your channel in particular, right, is that you had equally good content before you had really good packaging, right? So if you're someone who's looking for information, you're watching this and you're looking to learn things, don't fall victim to that, right? Like, don't sell yourself strictly because it has a lot of views. In fact, when I watch YouTube, I try to find those golden nuggets with like 1,000 to 2,000 views. That's where the good shit is.
Yeah, honestly.
Because the people that know so much about what they're talking about, they don't know enough about the other stuff to even know that they're shit. That's how you know they're a real expert. Ironically, like, we think, oh, because this person knows so much about YouTube, they must know about everything. No. The farthest thing from the truth. The people dropping the best knowledge don't know shit about packaging content. And so it gets viewed by 500 or 600 people that are super grateful. So I would actually say that comments are a better indication of value than views.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, YouTube's in an interesting state, and I'm curious what you think about it, because it does seem like we're in this loop where the hooks are getting more intense, the editing style is getting quicker, the ability to retain views is like, it is kind of like the Mr. Beast effect. Like, the whole style has changed, and you do have to play the game, which is why I'm grateful I listened to your advice. And like, I think Bunny Media is great, because until you package it correctly, I think it's hard to stand out. But I'm curious, are we heading in this endless direction on YouTube where it's just the optimization game forever, and endless hook optimization, title optimization, everything like that?
We're way over optimized. The Mr. Beast effect is the perfect way to summarize it. But I think the problem is that people chase the what and not the why. And that's why there's so much opportunity here, is because people think that it's the design or the over-optimized hooks or all these things that makes it successful. It's like, no, that makes it successful for his kinds of videos. So you really want to analyze, instead of the specific color they're using or any of these things, it's like, why did that work for the people they're trying to reach? The problem with that is that everyone's now blending towards this Mr. Beast stuff, and that's actually not even what most people want.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Yeah.
Like, most people are making educational content with like Mr. Beastification.
Yeah, and I even catch myself being guilty of this too, like, because it's, talking head style, and there's like bells dinging and like scene changes, and I'm like, what is going on here? But it's tough to also take your foot off the gas, because it's kind of works sometimes.
So it does to a degree. So the thing that I would say to you, if you're watching this, is that care more about who's watching your video rather than how many people are watching your video, because high value traffic that is really invested will always be able to make you way more money. Because there are people out there that we've talked about already that are on TikTok with millions of followers, getting millions of views on every single video, and they are making almost no money whatsoever, right? And then there are people who are creators that are a YouTube channel that's very specific and niche, and they have like 100 views per video, and they're making literally millions of dollars. Like, some of our clients that we work with, it's insane how much money they make off of how little traffic that they have, right? And so that's actually a really good problem to have, because if you're serving an audience that really rides with you and they really want what you have to sell, tiny little differences in improvement can be game changing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the biggest thing, is that, because so people will always talk about it, and I kind of stopped making like guru style content, because everyone's saying the same bullshit I was saying 5 years ago, and like trying to package it in a way where it's this new latest greatest thing.
Yeah.
And it's literally the same videos I made 5 years ago. So I watch it and I laugh, but the real money is made in the concentration and the connection between you and your audience, right? And so instead it's like, how do I double down and figure something that's actually really valuable and actually solves a problem, right? So if you're solving the problem of boredom, that's a shitty problem to solve. right? And almost every creator is solving or is attempting to solve that problem because it's the most widespread problem in the first world.
Yeah.
Boredom is the biggest problem, right? And so if you are not solving the problem of boredom, you need to first spot that and be like, no, I'm creating for this specific reason. So then don't fall victim to the trap of chasing the people who are creating the problem of solving boredom. There's so much numbers to be had in that problem, very little money because it all
Yeah.
goes to the top, right? And so I would way rather have, you can have like comparable income to someone with like 4 million times the views if you're actually solving a real problem. So when you're thinking about the content that you want to create, I want you to think about the business that you could build off of it and focus on real problems. Like in your life, what is a struggle that you have, or what is something that you really want to acquire, right? Like if you think like that, then you're going to make content that actually rides with you. And so, super long way of getting to the answer of your question. I'm seeing a massive change in terms of people that are fighting the status quo and winning disproportionately because of that. So, if you think that it should be done a different way, try it. Right? Like if you think that, and I actually, this is one of my YouTube fundamental practices I do every day with my agency, is when I'm researching for a client, I'll go in and look at what's currently performing within their niche, and I'll ask myself, is this actually what they want, or is this just ranking because it was there first and then everyone else just copied it? Right? Because
Yeah.
they saw what was there and they're taught to copy what is there. And so then everyone sees that every video ranking is the same, but that doesn't mean it's the right video. It just means it's what Google had. And then
Yeah.
because everyone copied it because they saw it there, and then now every video is like that, so you think that's the only way to do that. And oftentimes my biggest wins are when I say, this is dumb, this video needs to be 10 minutes long and every ranking video is 1, or the opposite, right? So believe in yourself as the expert and provide content that is for the people you're trying to actually serve. Don't just assume that everyone on YouTube is the same, because they're really, really not. So that was a tangent, but that's
That's
my
a good
answer.
golden rule, though. Yeah, it's a good golden rule because I've been curious about that because I'm glad I listened to your advice and packaged my channel properly. But now I do see it shifting more down that route of like the same style as everyone else, and so it's something I've been trying to kind of break away from again.
And so think about the foundation of how that became a thing, right? That became a thing because that was rare. That was hard to do, and it was scarce. Now that everyone is doing that, other shit is now scarce,
Yeah.
right? Like, so it's this, we do this, man. We always overcompensate as humans, and then it overcomes back. So right now we're at a point in content history where there aren't really rules, right? Like you want to know psychology to understand what makes people motivated to click, like the factors associated with that. But in terms of how you deliver the content, I would say the worst thing you can do is just straight up copy everyone else, because even if you get a video that hits, it won't hit because of you. It'll strictly hit because of the subject matter. And the problem with that is that you've now just created a purely transactional relationship that is also very fickle. People will leave because they don't have any investment to you.
Right.
And that's a mistake that I made early on with my content, is I was so concerned with getting views, and I did get views, but I didn't do it in a way that I could have built relationships with. And so, of course, it translates to some business, but it could have translated into way more, but probably less views had I
Right.
taken had the courage to do things right and understand that views, period, isn't the definition of right. Does that
That's
make
a
any
good way to
sense?
sum it up. Yeah.
I know that's kind of like 4,000 different places, but that's the point I was trying to make. I hope that made some semblance of sense.
No, I think it's a good way to sum it up because yeah, if you only chase views, it's not the full picture.
So then now let's bring it to where you kind of are today, right? So you built this online world, which you recently just changed the name of it. So I want you to talk about what that looked like, and the fact that however much you can or can't talk about in terms of the fact that you sold it or whatever, all that stuff. Can you walk me through what your life and business looks like today after all the stuff we've talked about?
Yeah, for sure. And that was actually kind of an interesting part of the story. So this online world was lucky. It benefited from a lot of Google updates, and so it kind of saw year over year growth. And in 2023, I kind of thought, I've been blogging since 2018. This thing's growing like crazy. I'm going to list it for sale and just kind of see what happens. Put it out there, see what happens. And a few other bloggers I knew at the time were kind of doing the same thing. It looked like a lot of people wanted to get out of the space, and so I listed with a broker called Quiet Light. They were decent to work with. And what followed was honestly the most stressful year of my life. The the selling process basically involved, pulling your pants down for everyone to see. Like you
Wow.
would basically have to give over all of your revenue and traffic information for the last 36 months. You had to hop on calls with people who are interested, answer their questions. I was having calls with people from, just an independent buyer who wanted to buy a site or get into blogging to like some large media companies that were acquiring sites, and like, they had a whole sales team and an acquisition team. And it was definitely a stressful but interesting process. And what ended up happening was Google was really ramping up its updates, and my site got clipped a little bit. But some people were getting like demolished, like overnight. They were getting hit with what later became called the helpful content update, which was Google's attempt at making the web better. And it kind of became like a ticking time bomb to, I gotta sell this thing before I get hit with an update and this thing goes to zero, because it was mostly an organic traffic business. Had some email, had some social media, but it was the Google show. Fortunately, I found a private buyer who was basically looking to get into the personal finance space. Um, they operate in the government benefit space mostly, and so we essentially just merged. It was a bit of it was a sale, it was a merge, it was a bit of everything. And so my life changed a fair bit because now I get to work with a cool American company, Consumer Co., where we have a bunch of different websites, different web portfolio, and we do a lot more than just organic traffic the way I was doing.
Mm.
But it was a bit of a wild ride, honestly, with the Google updates swinging like crazy.
That's so crazy. No one really thinks about how those things are now tied to massive businesses and they make or break crazy things. I think a lot of also people think that selling something is the dream, right? And then you lived through it and it was exhausting, it sounds like.
Yeah, and along the way it was interesting too, because a lot of people selling their sites ended up selling to some pretty unfavorable circumstances. Like there are a lot of people who sold to companies or to different buyers, and they had like an earnout structure. So they were on the hook for the next 2 years, 3 years, with however much that asset produced kind of determined how much they got paid. And I
Damn.
know a lot of cases where people sold and they basically worked themselves back into a day job, which they hated, and they didn't like their boss. They didn't like working for a business that they used to own but now didn't own. And so it's tough. There's no right answer. Like it was a really tough decision to sell, but I'm glad I did, because the industry kind of flipped on its head, and it was a bit of a mess, to be honest. Like trying to get out before the Google changed everything.
No kidding, man. That's a big lesson too for anyone who's starting any kind of online business, is that it can go away at any given moment, especially if you're relying on platforms that you don't completely control, which
Yeah.
that's almost every business now. Like almost every business is reliant on multiple third parties.
Yeah, I mean, if even something like Shopify changes how they do payment processing fees, that can really or shipping to certain countries, or fees or things like that. Like it is very difficult. So I think it's important for people starting things where they're so platform specific. Like if you just start a YouTube channel, you should build an email list. You should probably get some affiliate income going, because I'm curious if you've seen this on YouTube even, but people basically losing all of their AdSense revenue. That happened to me twice last year, where you get the fraudulent traffic slapped on you. Nothing you've done, but they just say, "Hey, you have bots on your channel. We're not paying you for a month."
Man, they can do that whenever they want, and they can also they have full discretion and they don't need to say anything, right? And you can even get warnings for your accounts to be shut down completely without too much merit. Like they're so busy that when they get these, like I have clients who start freaking out when they get these warnings or whatever, like for copyright, or there's a few different reasons you can get them. And if you get 3 strikes, you're out. Your account is gone completely. And
Yeah,
people can claim these with no merit. Like you can literally, if I wanted to be a dick right now, I could go to someone's YouTube channel and file this complaint. Obviously, if you do that enough times, you're going to get in trouble, but it'll be a warning. And there's so many things going on there that a lot of them get overlooked, and people get stuck with strikes that are so undeserved. So from day one, I would be thinking about, how can I diversify this? Obviously, if you're starting something brand new, sink yourself into it. If it's a YouTube channel, learn every little bit that goes into making a YouTube video and making a successful channel and then turning that into a business. But understand that you're building real estate on somebody else's land. And so
yeah,
you very quickly need to start thinking about, how do I diversify this? And the problem is, when most when most businesses are successful, they're like, hey, I finally did it. But they don't realize that they could just be giving away everything that they did if they don't diversify. So you need to be doing what Tom said, email lists, like SMS lists, maybe even like diversifying your relationship with these people. And also, I think a big one that almost every creator should be focusing on is building a genuine business off of who they are online, right? Because that's a way where your traffic becomes so much more valuable. And if it's not even your business, I think a lot of creators right now should be aligning with businesses, right? So if you're someone that makes content about social media, like you should do what I did back then and align with a specific tool, like a software company that makes sense for you, right? Regardless of what niche you're in, there's probably going to be a company that would make sense and benefit mutually from you being the face of their brand or constantly talking about their brand. And I think not enough creators are thinking like that of how do I diversify this, right? And so if you get a piece of a software company because you're talking about them all the time and they're your go-to tool for that, that's another way you can diversify it, right? So I love the fact that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think yeah, between freelancing or starting some complementary business or improving your personal brand somehow, I think it's important. Maybe not right at the start. I think that is another mistake people make where like,
Yes.
and I did that with blogging. Like I launched the blog, then I did medium.com writing, and then I was on Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, and it was like way too much to do. And so in the effort of trying to diversify, I just did everything poorly. But once you
Yes.
actually have, you have the core business unit, like there's something complementary you could do, even if it's an email list or like you said, you start a podcast, you start a YouTube channel for it, you do something else. Because I think eventually something will break or be taken away, or you'll have a revenue stream disappear, and that's not a good position to be in when you had only one stream of customers, revenue, whatever.
Yes, it changes so quickly. And I do love the fact that you reiterated the fact that you should really become an expert in something before you try to take on 5 things and do them all poorly. Because if you become so good at one thing, it's very easy to make enough money where you can then hire people to do the other things that you're not as good at.
Exactly. Yeah. And that helps with scaling so much.
And so many people are afraid to invest in that, but Tom is a perfect example. My situation has been very similar where you can grow so much more by investing into complementary things, right? And buying yourself more time. Because once you've built the entity, the YouTube channel or the blog, something that lives independently, getting to that point is so hard for most people. So as someone who's like me or like you that's actually going to put in the work to get there, we think that who would be willing to work for this because I just built this, right? Or you know what I'm saying? Who would be willing to be employed? A lot of people would.
Yeah.
Right. And so go find someone who's just doing this, who can help you out a ton, and it's going to help you be far more successful in whatever it is that you're doing. So I love the fact that you mentioned that.
Yeah. No, completely agree.
So before we wrap it up here, what else did I have for Tom? So we talked about the selling of it. We talked about your YouTube channel. We talked about your business today. Oh yeah. Here we go. This is what I want to talk about. So for you're out of all my friends, the one that I would say lives the nomad lifestyle the most. So I want you, as someone who's done this for years now, to give the real, the legit, what it's like to be a digital nomad. Is it as good as it's cracked up to be?
I like it a lot. I think
Okay.
I think it's pretty fun. And I mean, we've traveled together. We had a hoot in Mexico.
Yeah.
I think it's fun, but I'm curious what you think about this. I think it's very good in phases, and I don't think it's something I could do long term, because what I find is, and maybe this is just a Canadian thing, or maybe this is like a cold weather thing, but I find that going somewhere new and for a couple months or a month or two at a time is really reinvigorating. I find like I work a lot differently. I have new ideas. I meet cool people. I kind of have like a more of like a joy just getting out of bed every day, being somewhere new. If I do that for like 5, 6 months in a row, like I've done before, I feel like work does start to suffer, business does start to suffer. So I think that there's a bit of a balancing act there. But I love it. I think it's a great thing to do if you are freelancing, you have a remote job, or you have an online business.
So if that's their dream and they're building something like this, a side hustle, what are the kind of things they need to do to get there in terms of like how much money do they need to be making? Where are the places they should be looking to go first? How does someone get into this?
Yeah, well, I can talk quickly about how I got into it.
Yeah, please.
Because I honestly think it was a pretty safe way to do it. Because I think a lot of people glamorize the idea of like quitting your day job, selling everything, and getting like a one-way ticket to Thailand or something, which
Yeah.
like that could work. That could be great. But to me, that was too stressful. So I kind of did it in steps. Like I was working at an advertisement agency just out of school, and the first step was kind of, okay, I'm going to go work from Florida. I'm not happy here. If you want to keep me, I'm going to go. And they're like, okay, sure. So I did that for a little bit, and then on the side, I hadn't built up that much of a crazy side hustle income. There was just the beginnings of the blog, and then a couple of freelance writing clients. But I kind of got that income to a point where I was like, if I push, it'll match my day job salary, which at the time was about, I think, like $40,000 plus commission. So it was great out of school, but nothing crazy in Canada. And so I, got the side hustles growing a little bit, and then I quit the job, went all in on the side hustles and freelancing, and went to Colombia first with a friend. So it really was kind of just a formula. I was like, okay, you're making a decent amount to live off of from some freelancing. You can probably take a leap. You have some savings, maybe a couple months savings in the bank account. Um, Worst case, you try it and you lose all your clients, you lose all your money, and you take a 2 month vacation. And then you come back to it.
I love the approach though of making it safe for yourself, right? It's something that's inherently risky, but you can make it a lot less so by diversifying how you're approaching making money. Like for you, it was the freelancing clients. For me, it was the agency, but it's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's doing what the skill that you have for people who need it in terms of a business thing. So I think a lot of people I don't know why, because it's opened up so many doors for you and I, but a lot of people, when they want to be like an entrepreneur, they look down on that. They're like, oh, I don't want to be freelancing, or like that's not a good thing to do. And I think that's so silly.
Yeah, I think it's silly because you learn so much from it and you really expand your network, and it does take a lot of the risk out of the equation. And I think on top of that too, and I think this is a product of social media. I think people expect to be super successful, super young, and have this like blooming business, but like tons of people strike it big when they're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Like probably way more than half of people. So there's nothing wrong with being a freelancer. You could do that for 10 or 20 years. You could be a 9 to 5 worker. 9 to 5 jobs are awesome. Like at one point, actually, in this whole story, I quit freelancing and went back to a 9 to 5 for 5 months because I guess my mind got stressed one day and I thought, you know what? I'm tired of chasing freelance work. I want just a stable salary for a year. It was less than that in the end, but I agree. Like you don't have to just chase it in one way, and security matters. Keeping a stable income matters. So you can do it in lots of ways.
And I also think that opens up, by having less risk, by having a job like that or freelancing clients, it actually opens up your opportunity for taking on more risk, because you can try more different things, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. And when you are in a position like that, you can keep swinging, and eventually something's going to pop because you had the opportunity to do it. As long as you're still thinking about things, trying different things, if you can actually try them, that's a massive thing that could potentially be game changing if one of them even hits, which is a lot more common than people realize. I think the problem that you mentioned, which is so true, is that especially with young people, because inherently, right, when you think about it, when we were young, our potential focus was always at the end of the tunnel of school, right? It was always like, that's where success is found. And that's what we were told all the time, because social media didn't really exist for us until we were in high school. And it really didn't reach the level of shit that it is now, right? Whereas, and I always had this issue with school as a kid, because I was like, school is a scam, not because of anything but this. They're selling a dream that can't possibly be achieved, right? Because they're building it up in the kid's head of how great their life is going to be. So anything less than perfect, and perfect is impossible, is going to be a disappointment. So everyone leaves disappointed.
Yeah, more or less. I don't know many people who are like thrilled with the schooling experience.
None, right? Because they constantly sell on potential. And why does it sell on potential? Because the people who are saying that this is going to bring you your dream life are those that went through all of these steps. And if they don't say they're living their dream life, their life has been a failure. Because the teachers,
it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, the teachers are never going to say, "Oh, made the wrong decision." So that's why they're in school preaching like, "Oh, you have to do it like this. You have to do it like this. You have to do it like this." The problem with kids today is that the people who are actually having influence on them are other little shitheads that are like 18 years old who got lucky making one little stock or like meme coin, and then now every other kid thinks they're a loser if they don't have $1 million at 18.
Yeah, it's on the flip, or the inverse now, and that's the thing you see with so many of these like online gurus now. It's you can get rich quick. I did at 18, 17. I mean, I see videos out there of like kids who make like $1 million off of Snapchat stories, and they're like 16 years old, and it's super cool, but it doesn't have to be how you base your strategies, because there's nothing wrong with taking your time learning things as a freelancer with a job and then launching businesses like over time and in your 20s and 30s and so on.
If you take the approach that the get rich quick one, your chances of hitting it are a little like the lottery.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do it this route, you're guaranteeing some degree of success. And I would always opt for the latter. I think most people that are depressed and don't like their situation, it's because they're going to the lottery and expecting a sure thing, which is like just really impossible. And this is all due to algorithms, man, because whatever you see all the time, you think it's the norm, right? And so we've now done the disservice to kids of rewarding anomalies so frequently that people now think they're the norm. Right? Because if every time you go to social media, you see constant videos of everyone making $100,000 or $1 million, you think I'm the only one not doing this.
It does feel that way. Yeah.
It's inevitable, right? Because back in the day, if we were hanging around people, that was what we took in. Now their friends are right here, right? And their friends are the people they're watching. So they think that, okay, I must be a loser because I don't have this. And I even have that with an intern at my company. You know him too, Kaveen. Like, such a badass. He works so hard, has learned so many skills, but because of the things he watches, he thinks he's not successful.
He's doing way more than I was doing at his age, or I'm sure you were doing at his age. He's killing it.
He's doing absolutely amazing, man. And it's just, if you learn what's going on, you can diminish the impact that it has on you. And that is the ticket to success in almost anything. Because it's just figuring out who benefits from me thinking like this, right? And for these guru guys, like, they benefit from you thinking it's the norm, because if you don't think it's the norm, you won't buy their course.
Yeah, exactly. You won't buy their like get rich quick scheme, the $100, $1,000 course or whatever it is.
You won't follow them. You won't ride with them. You won't say that they're the best. You won't say all this shit. And then, right, like that's their whole business model.
Yeah, more or less. It's just attention and then selling.
So to summarize the whole point is that the biggest lesson that I would take away from Tom's thing is that brick by brick is the way to go. It's also really fun, man, because you have a lot of really cool stories to tell because you were trying different things and a lot of them didn't work. And that's actually the more fun part.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking back on it, like, it is funny thinking about phone farming or, some of the dumb things. Like, I tried all kinds of other things that failed, like dumb Amazon affiliate websites, drop shipping store, like, and you look back on it and you have fun along the way. I'm sure you're the same with all your YouTube channels, all the things you've tried over the years, and selling, what was it, skateboards in high school?
Yeah, we've done so much shit, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the thing, is that people expect it faster and they also think their first thing should work, which I think we need to do a better job, all of us that are creating content, of showing that this is thing 402. It's not number one. You know what I mean? Like, this is something we've tried so many times that eventually made us really good at this. And these kids see the thing that is 402, the 402nd try, and they think that was our first try because it's the first one that actually worked.
Yeah.
Well, they don't realize that, man, I failed at so many other things before this, and you should too. If we start celebrating losses more, there's gonna be a lot more happy people. Because some of the most happy times of my entire life are when I was sucking it. Like I was doing so shit financially. Every little business I was trying was just failing miserably. People were looking at me like this is the dumbest shit ever. I was getting roasted behind my back, all of those things. But I relish that opportunity because that's where the foundation is built.
Yeah, and those times can actually be pretty fun when you're just starting something new, because every tiny little win feels awesome.
So big, man.
Yeah.
I always push people to build stuff online, and this podcast exists because if you've not made your first dollar online from something you just created, it's a feeling that's so difficult to describe, and it also feels impossible, right? So to wrap this thing up, what I'd love for you to give people, Tom, because you are the side hustle king here, is what can people do that's approachable? Like, what are specific things that they could do to get them way closer to actually making their first dollar online?
There's a lot of things, and what's nice is a lot of the things you can do are free. Like, you don't have to buy a course or get mentorship or anything like that. It could be something as simple as reading up on how to write a better resume, how to build a portfolio. And maybe you start by showcasing some of your skills from your day job, something you already have, or something you could learn pretty easily, right? And pretty quickly, you'll be able to pitch people for freelancing gigs, or you'll be able to apply to part-time roles or freelancing roles or things outside of your main 9 to 5. And it's amazing because a single opportunity can really change your life, I think, or your income or your career prospects. Like, if you have a job you kind of like, but you're not in love with, and you land a decent freelancing client, that could open so many doors. And in 6 months, you might be freelancing full time, or you might get a full time job from a freelancing client that it's something you love doing. It's in the industry you want to be in, and all it takes really is, yeah, some time applying yourself and putting yourself out there. And I think it's just important not to be demoralized during that process, because if I do feel for people who are stuck doing something they don't want to be doing right now and they really want to get out quick, you do got to hang in there and you have to just keep trying, because something will catch eventually. And if you give up, then it won't. So just got to keep going.
So before I let you go, I can vividly remember when I had to have my first job after school because I took on student debt to go to school. I never wanted to go to school whatsoever, but I went because I played football there. And my dad, it was always a big thing to go to school. And so I didn't want to disappoint him. So even though I knew I should drop out after I stopped playing football, I didn't. And so because of that, I had to have a real job while running my business. And I vividly remember because like my dad kicked me out of his house. And so I had to move to a place I could afford. So I moved back to Guelph, but I was working in Oakville because I had gotten that job because when I got it, I was living at my dad's. I was close to him.
Right.
So I'm now commuting an hour each way to a job that I fucking hate while running my business at the same time and my YouTube channel. And I remember being in the car in my shitty Honda Civic SI 2004 standard garbage, driving on the highway in dead stop traffic, literally screaming, fuck this. Like I was literally screaming that at the top of my lungs. And that was the juice that got me so excited that I turned that into something positive. And I want you to share your experiences like this too. But I think so many people, they think that that's going to be it forever. And it either, that's like your fork in the road. That's where you decide, do I channel this and make it what makes me work like crazy, where I can only find success? Or do I make this the end of the story? And the choice is always yours. It's never easy, but it's always yours. So that's why when I'd get home after driving an hour and it'd be like 7 or 8 p.m., I'd worked an entire day, I would then sit down and film the videos, right? And I'd do this and I'd do that because when one of them hits, you can stop doing that thing. You can stop going to that job, right? But a lot of people, they get home, they're like, I'm tired from the job, and they don't do the thing. And that's why they have to have the job for the rest of their life.
Yeah. There's going to be a period of time, I think, where you really don't have that much free time. And then it is a choice at the end of the day. Like, do you want to take 6 months or a year or even 2 years or however long and just commit to building something or to trying new things and learning? Or do you want to at some point give up? And you have to make the decision. But it definitely isn't easy, but
it hurts.
It does. Yeah. But I think once you start getting the first wins, I think it's impossible to stop, which is why it's people are often so close, I think. And if they keep going, they'll hit it.
100%. And because I was one of the people that kept pushing through those when we were younger, I've had so many people come to me recently in the past few years and ask how they can start their thing. And they were the first people that were talking smack about me doing all these weird things online at the time, right? So I think that it's so important to just keep going until you find your first little win. And also don't need it to come from a specific place or at a specific time. Because if you do that, you're setting yourself up to almost guarantee you fail. But if you just keep doing things, you'll stumble into a little win and then it'll all make sense in the end.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And then one more thing I did here, which I think actually ties really well into this, is if you tend to say yes to new opportunities, I think that'll also get you quite far, which is another thing I learned in this whole process. Like, and there are so many jobs or freelancing gigs or things where like you might think to yourself, I have no business doing this. Like I'm not qualified whatsoever. Or this just like, I found out this job posting, this opportunity, but like I shouldn't apply. Why would I? It's not for me. I'm not qualified enough. Like you'd be amazed what happens if you just throw your name in the ring. Like if you do that enough times, something good will happen.
It'll work out. And when you do that, you force yourself to learn quickly.
That too.
In today's day and age with how fast technology moves, the ability to learn quickly is the difference between success and failure. Like it literally, when I bring people on or whatever, I always ask like, what else do you do besides the thing we're talking about right now? Because if you can show me you've learned a lot of things quickly, then I know that you're going to be able to move and adapt.
Yeah.
And so if you make yourself that person, if you're watching this, then success will come your way. But I've taken enough of your time here, Tom. So where can people find you, find your content, all that stuff?
Well, yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Tom Blake. That's where I'm publishing a lot of content these days. If you're curious about the beer money space, making money online or anything like that, you can go to webmonkey.com. That's where thisonlineworld.com now lives, over at webmonkey.com. So you can find us there as well.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate you, brother. I hope you come back on the Anti-Creator Club podcast very soon. And all the best, brother.
Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Peace.